who you are and where you're from. Thanks, Julie's just press record. So if anybody wants to just say, I will pick on you, Cora, to start, but does anybody want to jump in there and just say who you are and where you're from? You're very welcome.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to jump in. And I have worked with Lisa-Nicole in a former life for anybody who doesn't know that. I'm well familiar with being put on the spot. I'm Cora Lynch and I'm the project executive in the Michael Guinea Charitable Foundation. I know some of you from my Rethink Ireland days, and I know Samantha Brody very well from our work together in our foundations. So yeah, that's me, and I'm looking forward to
Great.
today's session.
Thank you. I said I wouldn't pick on people, but I will just go around just so that people jump in. But Kira, you're next on mine. Do you want to just let people know who you are and where you're working?
Yeah, I'm Ciara Austin. I'm the programs manager at the Ireland Funds.
Great. Thanks a million. Samantha, you're up next.
So Samantha Bryody, the CEO of the Sunflower Charitable Foundation.
Very good. Great. Thanks for joining us. Amy Power, lovely to see your face. How are you?
Hi, yeah, you too. And I haven't had a chance to even tell you this, but Amy Power, Rethink Ireland Growth Fund manager, was also a consultant for the not-for-profit sector. So very passionate around the whole capacity building side. So fair play. I think this is brilliant what you're doing, Lisa. So thanks.
Great. Thanks. Emily, you're next on my screen.
To keep the Rethink contingent going, Emily O'Flynn, I'm a fund manager at Rethink Ireland, so great to see familiar faces. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the session. Thanks, Lisa-Nicole.
Great, no problem at all. Thank you. And then who else? Susanna, are you able to speak? And if not, it's okay, by the way, if anybody can't, I'll go with kind of who the cameras are on, but anybody else wants to, they can contribute in the chat or jump in. And I see your note there, Avril, so no problem at all. We're delighted that everyone who is here is here.
It's Susanna here.
Hiya,
Sorry,
Susanna.
I was just slow to turn my speaker on. Sorry about that, ladies.
Great.
Yeah, my name's Susanna Murdoch, and I work with a very small fund called Cork Street Fund. It's a legacy from the Dublin Fever Hospital, and its formal name is the Dublin Fever Hospital Extraordinary Members Electorate.
Wow, so, it rolls off the tongue, Susanna.
That's a big handful. Or a big mouthful to say. But yeah, I'm just interested to see if there's any tips I can pick up to help Cork Street Fund work more effectively. So that's
Great
me.
stuff.
And I'm going to just keep the camera off.
No problem at all.
Thanks a lot.
Great stuff. Thank you. Okay, well, look, as I say, anybody else can jump up or jump in as we go. Hopefully my screen is sharing there. Anna, obviously, sorry, I didn't introduce, but Anna is working with Mantra, and so is Dami. So you'll see a few other names from our team as well here, and that in the background. Sorry. Okay, so what I wanted to just say is, if you don't know us, hopefully my screen will work. We have been involved both directly and indirectly in the sector for quite a long time. And we do work with a number of different foundations, grant-making bodies, including Lurgus, Vodafone Foundation. We work with Care Trust. But most significantly, I suppose, we've worked with Community Foundation, Rethink Ireland, and Motability Foundation. So we touch with, Julie has worked with loads and loads of other grant-making bodies in Australia and was the CEO of a grant-making body, and I've been the CEO of a grant-making body as well. So we do have loads of experience, both direct and indirect. But I think in our work in Mantra, what we find now is that we're also in a place and a position where we're working direct with about 200 organisations who have worked individually with various different grant-making bodies. And no problem at all, Emma. Thanks for sharing that. So we've got some experience. We've both been CEOs, myself and Julie, and we've both been fundraising directors, and we've both been jack of all trades and wearing a little bit of everything. And I think most importantly, we work alongside and with a huge number of organisations who are all trying to do the best they can. More recently, we started Mantra as a strategy organisation. We quickly realised that people needed the right culture. people were coming to us for fundraising. More recently, over the last year, we've been working very directly, wrapping around with some supports one-on-one to leaders of organizations. And so we started to gather up our insights around what are they saying, what are they feeling, what are they experiencing, and some of that is what we're sharing, but also some of the research and kind of desk research that we've found on some of the other insights for those that we are working with. And so we'll share some of those now. Sorry, for some reason it's not easy for me to flick on, so I'll figure it out. Give me a sec. It's never a dull moment. This is my two screen catastrophe situation. Okay. So we wanted to just start by saying, I always say money is mission. Money is the mission. It's absolutely true. But impact doesn't happen because they're funded. Good things happen when they're funded. But what we're really seeing more of is that actually real impact, real transformation happens when the people inside those are able to actually do things ongoing. And really, I suppose this is very obvious, but equally, more and more we're seeing organizations where they do have to jump through hoops in terms of they're borrowing money, robbing from Peter to pay Paul in terms of always chasing the money. And that means they're not actually able to make the biggest impact they could over time. So I suppose we all know this, the sector is so complex right now. But what we're seeing huge amount is that they are being asked to operate in survival mode. It's almost, the language is even really clear. They're talking about fire, frying pan to fire. They're talking about literally finding the time and headspace to do anything other than recruit or fill a gap or find money, or, dealing with people being, gaps in the team. So there's a huge amount of burnout or stretch. So that capacity stretched piece is huge. And at the same time, and this has been the case for the last, I think I'm in the sector about 20 years. So all along we've seen funding pressure, growing social need, and the constant change and uncertainty. But more and more that's happening to everyone. So I think we know this. I know I'm talking to folks who really experience this in the day-to-day. But we're seeing it more and more. What we also find is that there's a lot of programs being funded, but overall, we've come across a number of stats that really show that actually, because organizations aren't always in a position that they can fund core staff costs or development costs, really the systems and the people are underinvested in. Again, we know this, but some of the things we've picked up within our sector, within the charity and non-profit sector and impact space, very few have a formal coach, only 12%. We found various stats, but it's actually 10 to 15 kind of percent in anything we've seen. Huge amount of them being impacted by that loneliness of being, especially if they're first-time CEOs, they actually don't want to be asking questions of people within the organization or even their chair because they've just been recruited. And there is a lack of real development in mid and first-time kind of leaders to get them to the next level. So the succession planning. Sorry, Julie keeps going in and out because she's become violet in the background.
I go purple every few meetings, so it's another one of those. So I might just turn my camera off so it doesn't distract anyone.
No
Sorry.
problem. And the other thing we're finding is that actually a huge amount of charity managers are appointed without the formal training. They're put in place without actually really any kind of structure around how they are expected to become less of a program deliverer and more of an overall people development manager. And this is hidden risk, but we're seeing the impact of this in terms of how it's playing out for the people that work on the team and for actually, long-term program delivery. The other kind of pieces that we found was that actually, in Ireland alone, we know that this is just specifically looking at social sector, right? But we have the figures for all of the others. In the social sector alone, there's a huge amount of people employed. There's a lot of people coming into senior roles. There's a lot of stepping into new leadership annually. And the more of our CEOs and or general managers who are leaving the sector, the more we're having first-time CEOs. So we're putting some of the biggest problems into the hands of folks who don't necessarily have the wraparound supports to enable them to do the best they can. Doesn't mean they're not all brilliant. They probably are. But the key thing is they're figuring it out as they go a lot of these first time. And we also know that there's a tiny amount spent in professional development within the sector. And that's a global thing, not just an Irish thing. But essentially, there are markets that do this much better, geographies that do this much better, and the impact is seen. We can share these slides with anyone as well if you want after. So more recently, we were looking at, okay, well, what is the fallout and impact of that? And I suppose the key thing is we do know there are major recruitment and retention issues. And we know that actually getting the right people into the roles is a key issue. Operational workforce challenges, if I think about some of our other clients who are very vocal on this, you know, the likes of Cool Mine, who have huge qualified folks sitting alongside folks who are earning huge amount more in public sector roles. So it's becoming a real issue. And in the nonprofit sector, the average tenure is shrinking. So people are moving on faster and quicker. A key issue is they're moving on and out of the sector. And so our ability to actually have that long-term transformative impact for those we're funding is at risk. We looked at a number of different reports, one in the UK that kind of showed that actually the burnout piece is a real issue. And the biggest issue of people leaving the sector is just the ability to be able to afford to stay within it. And 1 in 7 in the US of CEOs are leaving each year. 1 in 7 CEOs leaving the sector each year and being replaced. So I think that just has real issue for our ability to actually change the biggest issues that we're trying to work on within the sector. So I suppose we know a lot of this, when they're unsupported, it's more reactive, they can burn out, there's staff turnover, but also there's the hidden stuff like, you know, slower decision making, reduced innovation, and the real dependency on grants, excuse me, and those capacity gaps. And in fact, Mantra is actually always being asked to bridge some of those gaps. We do interim supports, we wrap around them when we can, but ultimately that means the institutional knowledge isn't there. Long-term retention is a real issue. That means people are coming in even to a culture where it's kind of okay to just come in, train up, go on, move off. It's hard to scale. And really, I suppose the culture can be really fractured and fragile. I know from my own personal experience, my first CEO role within the sector, which is where I met Cora, so she'll know a lot of this. Ultimately, you know, firefighting is an understatement. We were trying to fundraise, we were trying to merge, we were trying to rebuild a culture that had been fractured from a gap of 6 months between me and the last CEO. I had no leadership team when I got there. The structures weren't there, the systems were outdated, neglected, and everyone in there really had to reconnect with everything from the bottom up. So if this is what is actually being created and out there, there is a real weak infrastructure, not just in terms of systems. This is actually right across the kind of lifeblood, the heart, the people. And so we really feel like even if the mission is super strong and the programs are really positive, how are organizations going to be able to deliver on what they're promising in their grant requests, in their applications for funding, when actually they're dealing with so much kind of challenge and systemic kind of issues in the organization? We are seeing some shifts in philanthropy globally around kind of recognizing organizational resilience, that it is impact infrastructure. There are a small number of organizations who are starting to fund capacity building and recognizing it's not overhead. And there really is, I suppose, a recognition and reports being funded around these stats and the burnout figures. So there's an increasing openness to hearing it. What we aren't seeing enough of is the ability to really transform the way things can be funded to to respond to that at the right momentum or pace. And I think that's kind of part of the conversation we wanted to start today. And we do know that when workforces are developed, that actually they can have better retention and better decision making, but also actually it returns better money, better actual return on investment. So we can provide some of the source material afterwards for this as well. So we've been working with lots of charity leaders, and some of the things they are saying, and this is literally verbatims: I just need space to think. I feel like everything's on my shoulders. I feel responsible for everything. I don't have anyone to bounce off things, so it can feel lonely. And they do need that ability to be more strategic. It's not about showing up. It's not about networking. It's not about another course. It's actually about the ability to sit with someone who is experienced and who can help them think through. And many of them do get mentoring or a few free kind of mentors and support. But actually the ability to do this for ongoing kind of problems, challenges and things that arise are where the gaps kind of are obvious. Others saying, you know, ultimately they're really just afraid. So they're living in this kind of fear that they're not across everything. They're waiting for something to fall out of a cupboard. I really know that feeling. I don't know if anybody else can relate to that, but that's not a nice place to be sitting. So this is what we're seeing. And so about 18 months ago, myself and Julie, we were really looking at this in the context of what we can do about it. From the work we're doing individually with folks, what can we create that's more of a template or more of a playbook or more of a kind of real safe space for folks to come. So both of us, as I said, have been CEOs and really have experienced that full time. And Julie, I don't know, you're probably still purple, but we're okay with that. Do you want to come in and just talk about your, oh yeah, she is, look, very purple.
Talk
about your first
aura.
Experience.
It's my purple aura. It's peaceful. No, absolutely. I mean, Lisa-Nicole and I had an awful lot in common when we met the first time. Both had sort of fallen into roles, kind of climbed the sector ladder, if you like. And when I got my first CEO role, I was very excited, but I was also like a bit of a rabbit in headlights. There were all these things I hadn't done before. Obviously, you have your board that you're reporting to, but you don't necessarily have the person you can bounce things off. You're not sure if you're putting a foot wrong. Now, in my actual experience, this was in my first CEO role, not my most recent one, I actually discovered financial fraud had been committed. And again, it was like boot camp, CEO boot camp, trying to figure out what do I do, who do I go to, how do I figure all this out. And I actually sought out a mentor myself. I sought out somebody who was more experienced than me, just to really bounce things off. And it was really transformational for me. It really helped me kind of point me in the right direction. But it did feel that I had to go looking for that. It wasn't a given. We didn't have any money to invest in professional development or support. So thankfully, this person volunteered their time, and that favor did run out eventually. So Lisa and I kind of banged our heads together, having gone through, she didn't go through fraud, but very similar experiences managing teams in complex environments. And this is kind of where we landed.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm purple again.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So this is a short little intro to Thrive, but I want to talk specifically about some of the community leaders that we've had doing it and what it can offer, and just then explore kind of what are some of the ways that actually funders can potentially engage with this, or what the barriers are to this, because I think it is a different way of thinking. But we've introduced Mantra Thrive, which is a leadership support system specifically for folks within the impact sector. And it includes one-to-one mentoring, and it includes a sounding board every month and check-ins on strategy. But it also includes online platform with tools, tips, downloads that actually really are practical. A lot of CEOs kind of are cobbling things together, even using AI, but these are more trusted kind of values-based tools, etc. And then also ongoing learning. So just to give you a sense, in 2025, the Community Foundation supported 9 leaders on the programme. And so they got customized support, capacity building, etc. There was a couple of in-person sessions, but there was also one-on-one matched mentors. So each of the 9 leaders had different mentors depending on where they were at, what they needed. It wasn't one person running the whole program. It was very much so customized to where that awardee or grantee was on their journey. And it was very kind of bespoke to them. And essentially, like I say, there was bite-sized learning. So we worked with Learnovate in Trinity to develop our program. We worked with the Learnovate both on an acceleration to help us build it, and then also to really kind of make it sticky so that it was practical. So it's not a course, it's not a program, it's very much so bespoke one-on-one stuff before leaders in the impact sector. And one of the things they suggested was this kind of bite-sized reminder, nudges, etc., and then connecting people into the community. And I know with Rethink, we've spoken a number of times about the fact that sometimes they just want to bounce things off each other. They don't all know each other. They don't even know what each other are doing. So we've created a space where they can come together a little bit. They've access to webinars, reflection space, bringing them together. We also did a big strategy sprint with a number of the leaders at a community foundation event. So it was really, really great. And I think ultimately we had, we had a number of things we wanted to focus, but it was a lot around the emotional culture, psych safety, resilience, and leadership. And then some of it was about more practical kind of purposeful leadership. But ultimately, it was about giving folks the space to think so they can be more innovative, more impactful, and recognize some of the problems they're running into on the day-to-day are things lots of other people are experiencing. So being able to cross-reference and share some of those key takeouts shortcuts the problem. So they had that collaborative peer learning, and also being able to create some customized pieces around helping them craft their own kind of value proposition, craft their own kind of story, develop their own brand thinking, and then accountability measures, how they get the best out of the team. So it was a lot of really practical impact stuff to make sure that actually they were getting the best out of everything they were doing. And I think ultimately, we knew this is lifted from some of our report back to them as well, but we know that stronger leaders create stronger impact, but it also gave them tools to help them question themselves around their own accountability, their own what we call leadership shadow, that ripple effect. So it was really, really useful. I'll just bring you back in, Julie, to talk through some of this. This is what they were saying helped them the most.
Lovely. Thanks, Lisa-Nicole. I'll keep my camera off. It's too distracting. So we surveyed the 9. We have surveyed other people who've done this program, but we just thought this was particularly relevant because it was the Community Foundation and where they saw the most value in it. Interestingly, like in terms of the engaging with it, they engaged with all of it, but the monthly sounding board with Mantra strategist with their mentor kind of came out on top, along with the in-group sessions, which relates back to that community, being in it together, if you like. What the kind of call out stats for here is that at the other side of the 6 months, 89% said they were more confident as a leader, and 89% felt they felt better equipped as a leader. And then you'll see those other figures there. They're feeling more positive. Some of them were in pretty dire straits when we started working with them. And actually, as one of the strategists, to sort of see the evolution over the 6 months was quite phenomenal. It was really tailored to them. So one person I was working with was actually trying to step up into a CEO role, but she wasn't really quite there yet. So I did an awful lot of one-on-one work with her to that, and she ended up getting the role at the other end. We worked with her a bit longer. Another was having some issues with a founder. She had taken over from a founder. I have been there. I have worn that hat. So we were, really working through on her confidence. With another, it was actually about mapping out her career path, beyond this role and where she saw herself going in the organization. So each was really different, but each, it was kind of tailored and personalized, like a leadership support system, if you like. Yeah. I'll let you flick screen.
All I wanted to say as well is just to say, like, even if your organization's never engaged folks on Mantra Thrive type equivalent, there's something around that. Is there a way to build in the one-to-one supports for them in the way you fund? Is there a way to build in bringing them together and convening them a bit more from within your own organization? So this isn't just about us saying, hey, get thriving. Of course, we want you to do that. It's actually about saying this is what the leaders really felt helped them do better, create the better impact, coming together more as a group. And I think a lot of the time, you know, there are some structured programs. I know within Rethink there are a few online, but even just the in-person stuff that isn't an event, that's about them sharing that peer learning piece, I think is really key. Back to you, Julie.
Oh, my button. Yeah, I think we can probably park this more or less here, but you know, back to that most valuable piece is that consistent space to think and talk. So it's not a once and done, and that external perspective. Because often, I mean, if we had both been, you know, CEOs in smaller organizations and then into larger ones, we've probably been there, worn the t-shirt. So there's a lot of really practical advice that we were able to offer. If we didn't have it, we had a huge pool of strategists and mentors that we could draw on for that. So I just think that's kind of the most important piece of it, is that one-to-one, the sounding board. Like, I have this HR issue, what do you think? Or, you know, just those little things that you don't have anywhere to go and ask. You can't be asking the people reporting to you. You don't really want to be escalating these things to boards. So just that sort of space for you was really valuable.
Yeah. And then these are just some of the kind of comments folks said as well, which I think really kind of talk to it as ultimately, you know, really kind of meeting people at a point in time where it can stop them feeling burnt out. It can stop them leaving. It can interrupt any kind of spiral, or the firefighting, by just trying to help them tease through some real challenges. And I suppose from my perspective, I've spoken to a number of different foundations, and it's not always the way funding is supported and enabled, but it's just actually saying, if we know the problems and we know these are some of the things that can actually help support folks and keep them in the sector for longer, and working across the sector and becoming kind of that mentoring piece for others as well around moments where they had that kind of wobble, I think it can be really, really valuable. So this is basically just a quick look at some of our Thrive stuff in the background. We're not going to go into this, but just to give you a little look around what Mantra Thrive kind of looks like. There's tools and playbooks and events, and people can book in their call and do all that in there. We've a whole host of tools. You'll see strategy on a page, a reset, ethical funding and risk reflection tools, story arc tools, AI readiness, all of that good stuff. So this is kind of built specifically for the impact leaders that are out there. But I think even if it's not the Mantra approach, we'd love to see more consultants being engaged to support grantees and awardees as well. And I just wanted to, just before we open the floor, to discuss with yourselves kind of some of the real impacts that this is having. So, and that we think that beyond funding has. So obviously Rethink, you know, I'm just speaking to the folks who are here from Rethink. Actually, I'll stop sharing for a moment. Rethink have done the non-financial supports for a long time, and so do know the benefit of actually being able to meet organizations where they're at. That's hugely ends up being about, you know, programs or strategy or impact measurement and all that. And I think, you know, we actually have captured a lot. We've been working as a lead consultant for 3 years, I think, with Rethink. We've been working with Community Foundation for all of Mantra's time, as well as Rethink. And really just being able to kind of capture a lot of what things people need and put it into a package has been valuable. But the main things I'm seeing as a difference, and I think this is really interesting, is we've worked with a couple of organizations through this last year, and we've stayed working with them in different guises. And what they're reporting in terms of apart from confidence, etc., is they're now building much more structured kind of SMT, so that it's not all sitting with them. They're getting the time and space to think that through. As they scale, it means they're actually putting the right time and thought into things like innovation. So you've got the likes of Spree, I don't think they'll mind me mentioning, got the likes of Spree, who are actually now really becoming this regeneration kind of centre of excellence, and who will be able to put the time into cascading that impact to other organizations. She's always been brilliant, but she's just actually getting the time and space to do some of that kind of cascading piece. And that's just one example. As Julie said, we're seeing succession planning happening much more effectively through this. So even if it's money is still given in the same way, if organizations can be encouraged to find ways to have the resources, even for a short period of time, so that they have days away or even funded days away that allow them the strategic thinking, it just unlocks potential for so much more. And at the moment, I think the challenge is, no matter who we speak to, whether it's a family resource centre or whether it's a big charity or a small charity or social enterprise, it doesn't matter. They're literally constantly just trying to figure out where the next money is coming from. And that means they're chasing money, and the stuff going on with teams and culture and people management stuff is eaten into their, or living rent free in their brains the rest of the time, which means they are burning out. Whether or not they're saying that word, they are ultimately just constantly on. So I don't know. We felt it was a conversation worth starting, both from it's a bit of a case study in terms of what we've been doing, but I'd love to hear what has been working within your organizations for your awardees and grantees when you bring people together and convene them, and how you fund, whether there's potential ways to be able to fund kind of development in a way that's not just about peer learning, but actually that one-on-one stuff. Just love to hear what is happening in how we're able to fund impact beyond projects and beyond the immediate. So I just open up the floor if anybody wants to kind of talk about something that's been really, really interesting of what you heard, if you have a question, or if you wanted to just share some of the things you're seeing from your grantees, awardees, or the people that you work alongside with, and just share something that's worked really well with each other as well. Because the more we can keep people in the sector, I think the more impact we can have overall together. I'll shut up for a minute now and allow a bit of space. Does anyone want to ask any questions or make any comments first?
Yeah, Lisa-Nicole, I have a question. Thanks so much for that. Really, really informative. And I loved seeing it, just how neat and tidy and packaged it is. So
it's a work in progress, Amy. It's a work in progress.
Oh, it's lovely. Yeah. My question is that in the Rethink Ireland context, we don't always have project leads, so the people that we are engaging with, as CEOs.
Yeah.
They may be quite innovative project officers, whoever they are, and delivering an actual project, and sometimes kind of championing that.
Yeah.
And they've kind of got it in, and they're looking for it to be sustained and scaled over time.
Absolutely.
In the example of Community Foundation, etc., have you worked with in that context as well? Because there is that piece around, they can go to their manager or whatever, but they're the innovator, and they're trying to move things along.
So I think it's a really good point. So first of all, Mantra Thrive isn't just for CEOs or GMs at all. It's leadership at all levels. But we do have different cohorts. Obviously, in that example, they didn't only pick GMs even. They did have some project leads.
Yeah, a lot of project leads.
So I did deal with, for example, I was mentoring 3 CEOs, but actually in several other cases, it was a project manager or project lead. And in some cases, so it's very varied. And I think we match the mentor accordingly for that. But what I would say on a more general level, like not just about Thrive, is I think you're spot on. What we want to be doing is finding ways to connect, fund and support leaders from across all of the organization. And we talk about leadership. So this is a leadership support system. It's a thriving leaders, thriving many, we called it thriving leaders, but it's about leadership at all levels. It's about the fact that we actually have to manage self, manage teams, manage projects, doesn't matter. It's really about kind of being able to come at it from that holistic point of view. And the other thing to say is, outside of the Community Foundation group, what we had last year, we had 45 different individuals. They were, some were fundraisers, some were community activation project leads, some were CEOs, some were JM. It was very varied, and they all got something out of it. Some of the CEOs might have got something very different out of it, but to be honest, I'm not even sure that's true. A lot of the time they all reported the same thing, which was time and space to think and sound out some of those real practical day challenges, which, let's be honest, a lot of the time that's about people or, you know, or managing expectations up or sideways or down. Like, you know, no matter where you are, the things we face tend to be same kind of challenges.
And
So
actually,
that's
oh,
right,
sorry,
yeah.
Lisa, sorry to
Go
cut over
ahead,
there.
Julie.
Amy, a real practical example actually is a Rethink grantee, Helium, who we love.
Yeah.
And Helium came in through Rethink to do a funding strategy with Mantra. So we did the funding strategy. And then at the other end, they were sort of a bit like, oh, we've all of this to do now. So they actually came onto Mantra Thrive for 6 months to actually help bed down the funding strategy, get the right structures in place, get the right people in place, build the right committees around it, with using Mantra, or myself in this case, as that sounding board and help direct them, work with them, I guess, to make that. So now after 6 months, they're in a really good stead for doing it themselves the next, you know, the next iteration.
And so they funded that themselves. I think the challenge where organizations are trying to find the money for this themselves is that actually even that process can take, thanks Avril, even that process can take a couple of months, and they're going back to the board, and they often feel it's a reflection on themselves to even be asking for this wraparound support. And I think the point we're trying to make is, you know, no matter who you use, no matter what way you can do this, if funders and grant making bodies can wrap around folks and support them in a way that enables this to become the norm, that like you know, to have that kind of development support, that space time strategy, or through your convening, I actually think the benefits are absolutely massive. And you know, I think it's really just about kind of recognizing that sometimes if, you know, any of this development piece is sitting as kind of almost core or overhead in a funding application, like I think that's really limiting for our ability to keep the right people in the jobs they're in now. So yeah, so it's just to open that conversation a bit, I suppose, as well, you know.
Can I jump in? I have a question, if that's okay. And I might have to drop after this. That's why I want to get
No
in first.
problem, Cora.
So I come from it from a very different perspective, in terms of the foundation and the resources of the foundation, as opposed to a Rethink Ireland or a community foundation of Ireland. Okay. And I see the relevance in the program and how it can really achieve impact, particularly for CEOs, for maybe smaller charitable organizations or founder mode charitable organizations that are trying to move past the founder. However, I think there's deep sensitivities with this based on the potential grantee, like the potential grantee portfolio I see. And so I'm just trying to understand, if I potentially meet an organization on the ground and I think they could really benefit from that, but I'm not contracting in the way Community Foundation and Rethink Ireland contract them, and there's different obligations, let's just say. So how are you dealing with those one-off CEOs and organizations, or leadership individuals within those organizations, and bringing them on board to a program like this? Because there are sensitivities.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to explore a little bit around the sensitivities piece, and whether, because I could be misinterpreting what you mean.
Is it
to
tell a CEO of an organization that you really believe in what they're doing, and you really believe in their organization and their mission and their vision and their project and the impact they're having on the ground, but they need strengthening. They need the skills, maybe.
I definitely wouldn't position it in that way. It's like, actually, here's what we've heard.
But I think I would like to understand, not within the CFOI context or the Rethink Ireland context, those individuals, how are you bringing them on board for this program outside of those two kind of grant making bodies?
I think the key thing here is that typically when you ask people what do they have, if you're even asking them from our perspective, if we even do a social media post that says, you know, something around, do you feel you have enough time, space, supports? The answer is always no. So it's very much so an open door you're pushing in terms of giving the supports. The way our program works in general, as an individual, like we've been doing a lot of this with our existing clients and saying, look, if you need ongoing support, here's a really easy, simple way that isn't expensive, because it's a once a month check-in, right? So we onboard them, but they do a survey saying what their needs are. Then we do an onboarding call. Then we match them to the mentor based on what they say they want and need. So it's very much so a what do you need, not a we think you need help type thing. Do you know what I mean? But it's also about recognizing that lots of the stats that we're sharing today, these are known facts, realities that CEOs are saying. They are feeling stretched and frazzled. And yet we know if we just had an hour to think, the amount of CEOs or leaders or community project leads who are saying to us, I just need my holidays so that I can go off and have a think for work. That's not what holidays are supposed to be for, but that's what we're using them for now. So I think, Cora, it's recognizing that if you were working with the grantee, it could be something that you're actually, if they're applying for funds or if they're applying, you could be asking them as part of an intake, do they feel they also would benefit from a leadership support system or monthly mentoring or a sounding board or access to a strategist or people culture change advisory. You'll find most of them will say yes to that. So I think there's ways to overcome those barriers. But again, we would sit down individually. We have other foundations, we have other organizations that are signing up directly themselves. So we have a process to manage that, Does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
I was thinking about different sensitivities as you were asking it. So that's why I'm just not sure if that's kind of addressing that. But I think what's worth saying is Thrive isn't just for VIA foundations. The reason we wanted to talk to foundations about this is because we can go off and sell this to corporates all day long. We really want to make sure the sector benefits, right? So DEI people come on. We've got PJ Hegarty, DEI folks, HR leaders doing Thrive. That's not where we really think the sector will benefit. So that's why we're talking to yourselves, because I think Thrive is something we can all benefit from. I just said to Julie earlier, I need a Thrive strategist myself because I'm in the weeds today. So this is the reality. But I do think as a foundation or a charitable trust or a body that is working with folks who are trying to make the world better, I think it would be amazing to see us stepping kind of back a little bit and thinking, how could we enable more groups to actually benefit from stuff like this? Doesn't mean I'm saying it has to be us, but we've now invested in a lot of this. It's there. The other thing worth saying is we offered to Community Foundation without the strategist one-on-one. We have a lot of tools and access to downloadables, to content, to webinars. We're very willing to also make that available to folks within the sector. That isn't the bit that costs us. The one-on-one stuff is the bit that costs us. I can't give that away free because I'm paying somebody to deliver that, right? So we can absolutely work with our partners to make sure. So we gave 3 or 6 months, I think, of access to anybody at a Community Foundation event. So again, if you're out talking to groups of awardees and you want to do that without the one-on-one, but they get all the other stuff, we're very open to doing that, to build that just to give them some of the support. We've already built this. We already do our monthly webinars. We already have that done. Let's not reinvent the wheel on all of it. So that's kind of part of what we wanted to talk to you about as well.
And Cora, just one thing, sorry, I know we've gone over time now, so if anyone does need to jump, totally appreciate it. The other piece, when we talked about succession planning, where Thrive works well is as a thriving team. So you're not just taking on the CEO or the executive team, it's actually 5 people within the organization. And a little bit of that is how do we build the capacity within the teams we have so that they take our jobs. It's my proudest thing in my career that my, deputy has always taken my job as CEO and as fundraising director. Because I was always trying to make sure I could have an exit plan at some point. No, don't worry, Lisa-Nicole. But actually, that's kind of a bit of
very happy for you to do that as well. That'd be great.
As well is how do we build the whole team's capacity, not just the person at the top of it? And there's 3 tiers. There's thriving leaders, thriving teams, and thriving organizations. With teams probably been the sweet spot, isn't it, Lisa-Nicole?
It is, yeah. We do a lot with that, and even some exec teams then get their individual teams doing it as well. But look, that's this isn't just about the Thrive piece. It's more about, are there ways for you to actually find, I won't use the word loopholes, but find creative solutions to enable folks to get the support they really need, that check-in they need, and that convening time, because I think it really is powerful. So sorry, I am conscious we are off time. So anybody needs to go, please do. Any questions or any other reflections or thoughts, you can also email us or reach out if you want to talk more specifically about your organization or those you're helping as well. Thank you all for joining. Amy, congrats.
Thanks, Mel. We'll have a proper catch up.
Yeah, for sure. And lovely to meet you, Emily.
Thanks a million. And can we get the slides after, Lisa-Nicole?
Yeah.
Thanks so much. It was such an interesting session.
They'll be sent on Friday because it's Dami who's jumped on, is actually on a public holiday in Nigeria today, so she's off today and tomorrow.
Friday.
So we'll send her the recording and the slides. Not a problem.
Hopefully it was interesting. We're kind of conscious that actually, you know, ultimately this is something we're really passionate about. And obviously we'd love if organisations jump on board to do lots of it, but it's not just about that. There's so much reality around this. I think if all of us can do even a little bit to support them more in a more meaningful long-term way, it'll help us solve some of the problems, you know. I'm going to get on to SEI as well. You've just both reminded me they would probably benefit from something like this as well, I think.
Yeah, they would.
All right. Listen, good to see you both. Thanks a million.
Thanks a million.
Bye. Have a lovely afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Excellent. Sorry, my video is still gone. Am I? Yep.
Okay.